Hey team, welcome back to the show. Today I have the whole crew here, Andrea, Natalie, and Dani. We are talking through our coaching prerequisites for getting shredded. So we have two very shredded people here, two very rotund people here today. So we have both ends of the spectrum to give you all angles. Natalie and myself are the rotund people, of course. I'm stoked to get into it. But last week we did like kind of our, Dani says she's rotund. That's actually a good segue. Last week, I think we all updated on kind of where we're at. But Dani, fill us in on kind of what you have been up to with your own physique goals, what you're working towards currently.
All right. Well, this is very exciting. Yeah, your girl has been eating. We were in like a 10% surplus from maintenance for like the last 6 weeks, and we are about 12 weeks out from the Ben Weider Natural Pro. So now we're getting shreddy.
Okay. Um, you were only, like I said, it only been 6 weeks since the last show. When did you last compete? That's crazy.
Yeah, it was. When was it? June 20. Oh no. Yeah, June 27th was the
Okay.
Oregon Natural Pro.
What's the date for the Ben Weeder?
November 13th.
Nice. Okay. Are you guys trying to push to like a leaner condition than your last show, or like what's the game plan there?
Yeah, conditioning is kind of I think what we're gonna go for. I've
Okay.
kind of got as much size as I can,
Hmm.
and conditioning is that's the last thing that you want to ever want to be like pulled on is not enough conditioning, and I think it's also about confidence on stage.
Yeah.
And if I'm not as conditioned, I don't think I feel as like mentally there. I need to see like lines
It's
everywhere.
understandable. Okay. Okay. From like a stage weight perspective, how far away roughly do you think you are from the goal?
Right now, I'm about 5 kilos up. So what is that? About 12 pounds. So yeah. And then I mean, I'll probably get down to about 61 kilos. So I'll get down to like 134. And then a lot of that will come off in the last 2 weeks in terms of just food, less food through the system,
Yeah.
like less fiber, water, all of that. So when I stepped on stage, it's funny, over the years, my stage weight hasn't really changed all that much, but my
Mhm.
conditioning certainly has.
Okay.
So we'll see. Hopefully, step on stage at, yeah, about between like 131.
Okay. Okay. And I mean, if stage weight it hasn't changed that much, but conditioning has improved, then you've added some tissue, but that's cool. Okay. So you're not really too far away from where y'all want to end up.
It doesn't feel that way.
Mm.
That's where the body dysmorphia and all that stuff. But that's why I have a coach. That's why you trust the process and just take boxes, and just do the work.
I love it. Cool. All right, let's get into our prerequisites for getting shredded. So really how I would look at this is like a common question I get will be like, hey, why is this person in a photo shoot prep? I know like that's the goal for myself as well, but you're telling me I'm not ready for that yet. Like, why are we in a building phase or a primer phase? Why am I not ready for that phase? So really want to talk through again, like kind of the things we're looking for to ensure that a client is prepared for that to get the best outcome possible. The goal isn't just like to get the client as lean as possible. It is to create the best possible outcome, which ties into where your biofeedback is at, where our muscle mass is at, et cetera, going into a process like that. So again, let's kind of talk through what we would consider the prerequisites to get shredded. Um, Kick things off. I think one of the most important things is going to be the amount of muscle mass the client has. Probably the biggest variable here that determines do we get a great result or do you just look like a stick figure for the photo shoot or whatever we do? Um, Probably the biggest one most people are missing. So I would say, like again, let's talk like a photo shoot process, or you guys could think like contest prep as well. Would you all say typically you have people spend a pretty good amount of time in a building phase prior to that? Or is it often you will like bring someone in, hey, right away we go into a photo shoot process before having gone through like a building phase?
I only can think of one time where we went directly into a photo shoot prep, and it was a continuation of what they had already started on their own and a coach themselves.
Mhm.
Every single other time, and definitely my preference is to have somebody build first. And one reason is to build muscle. Another reason is to get familiar with them as a client and to also know for certain that that's something that they're ready for. Like their adherence level is there and they're someone who is going to be consistently checking the boxes.
Yeah, for sure. I think seeing how someone operates through that will really give you a good insight into like how they're able to operate as a whole. I find like someone can't manage like a building phase fairly well. Something like getting into the depths of diet and trying to get extremely ripped rarely goes super well either. What about you in terms of the photo shoots, Natalie?
I've only had one, um, and that was Rochelle somewhat recently. And that was never supposed to be a photo shoot. Like when I brought her on, we went through primer phase and I wanted to lean her out, and that was her goal as well. She's like, Rochelle is funny because she's like, I don't really care about fat loss. Like I always get kind of bored. So that's why I need coaching because I need someone to like hold me accountable and just make me stick with it. Not because I can't stick with it, but just because like I get bored and I'm like, yeah, girl,
Mhm.
same. Like it's the fat loss side of things, like outside of contest prep, I know I spoke about this before, just like doesn't hold a lot of interest for me as an athlete. As a coach, I love like coaching the whole process. As an athlete, like I just want to build all the time, like build or prep. That's it. But once we got going with Rochelle, we were able to build a bit through like the early stages just because, she was with a coach now and we'd like optimize things and like, fix some training. And then as she started to lean out, the conversation just became like, hey, actually, is this something you'd be interested in? Um, and of course, like the leaner she got and the more we were able to kind of optimize training and build further, we knew she had a good amount of muscle mass. So there was going to be a good outcome. And
Mhm.
I think also psychologically, kind of what you were speaking to, Jeremiah, in terms of how the client approaches and handles themselves during the building phase will tell us a lot in terms of athlete maturity.
Yeah.
So a big red flag for me would be the whole when can we cut, when can we cut, when can we cut? Like, when are we going to photo shoot prep? When are we going to photo shoot prep? Whereas the best outcomes I've seen from our clients are those who are totally on board for the entire process.
For
And
sure.
because they're so into it and on board, and honestly, for the love of the game, I know it's going to be a good outcome for a photo shoot prep, which is
Yeah.
important because we're pushing harder and further than we would for just a lifestyle cut at that point.
Yeah. No, that's a very good insight. I always like it's never the people who are in a huge rush to get into fat loss ASAP who get the best outcomes. Because I think it is just, hey, like we're enjoying the building phase, we're able to be super consistent with it. I was just talking to Kaylin, it's Coach Kaylin, about this yesterday because I mean she's made so much progress in our building phase and we've extended that timeline. Like initially she had wanted like right now to be like we gone through a build and a cut and I basically pushed her like, hey, we're gonna push the building phase back until basically we're gonna continue to like the end of the year and then get into fat loss. And like she's built so much. I'm so excited to uncover that. But she's like managed this whole phase so well as well. So I know like I've only spent like 3 weeks actually in fat loss with her the entire time we've worked together. But just based on how well she's been able to manage this, I know that she's gonna be able to nail that as well. So I do think it's a just very good way to like start understanding adherence as well. Now speaking to Rochelle, um, she had a lot of muscle. Even like her coming in, just based on muscularity, adherence aside, like your lack of knowledge about her adherence aside, just like looking at a physique, would you have felt good about taking her into a photo shoot prep?
I think I probably would have,
Yeah,
but I would need to go through the checklist that we're going to go through today for all of the other adherence markers like biofeedback, like all of those things. But in terms of muscle mass, if there were some bizarre scenario where I like knew everything about Rochelle prior to her coming on. If I, just assessing her physique, I would have felt pretty good about it. But then
Yeah.
also, as a coach, like I want to, yeah, I'm gonna leave it there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. I'll say like I have like Kathy, who I just finished a photo shoot prep with. We did a primer slash body recomp type phase for like 8 weeks and hopped into fat loss. But she had shown me goal physique for the photo shoot versus current. She's a coach herself. She's been training a long time. Had a decent amount of muscle. We've already added a lot more, but she had a decent amount of muscle. So just based on that, I was like, oh, dude, like we can get a way better result than this if this is like what you want, and then push it further. So again, like there's other elements to this, but having a prerequisite amount of muscle mass, I would say, is so important, especially if you're not someone who's trained well, trained hard for a long period of time. Probably not going to get the best outcome if we hop right into a prep.
I think it could be interesting too if you take on an experienced, by experienced I mean training age, trains really well, trains hard, already a good amount of muscle mass, and they're like not too far off the goal.
Hmm.
Because a lot of coaches will want photo shoots for marketing purposes, which is understandable. So if they're not too far off the goal, I think it could work if you're like, yeah, okay, let's like lean you out now. We're not that far away. Let's push, lean you out, do a shoot, and then reverse you and do the entire process and do another shoot a year and a half later, because then we can like, we're starting from a lean place, we can build you, and then you're going to have something new a year and a half, 2 years down the road to uncover. And as a coach, you can also document the entire process along the way, which, clients
Yeah.
enjoy seeing, and you're walking the walk and all of those things. But of course, that does require some buy-in and commitment from the client, making sure that it's a good coaching relationship and they're, down for this much longer term process
Yeah,
would work.
yeah, no, that's such a common process. Like Lindsay Mundy, that's like exactly what we've gone through. She more or less started in the photo shoot prep, did a long building phase. She got such a better result did another photo shoot prep. She got such a better result. We had so much more muscle, but that's like 2+ years of us coaching together now. That is very cool to see. Andrea, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say Daniela. That's exactly what she did as well. She didn't diet right away, but we did like a longer primer phase and then
Hmm.
dieted. And she just impromptu was like, "How about I do a photo shoot now?" We were planning on it being more of a long term thing. She's like, "I'm gonna do one now, and then after we build, I can do another one." And I think that's so fun because then we can compare the two, like you said.
Love it. Okay.
I think that was more, I guess, what I was thinking. Like, all right, what is the goal of the photo shoot? What is the purpose, and then also what is the plan for after the photo shoot? What's or not the photo shoot, but just getting shredded, right? Because that shouldn't just be the end point, right?
Yeah,
What is
that's true.
what is the plan for what is the exit strategy for coming out of that, and then what's the purpose afterwards?
Yeah.
Because that also needs to be thought out. Otherwise, clients can absolutely derail and go completely the other way.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I think a better way to put it than how I initially did, which was just like make sure we have a lot of muscle, is make sure we have sufficient tissue to support the goal we want for the photo shoot, basically. And then we can again continue to evolve and adapt from there. Anything else on in terms of muscle mass? How do we know if we have enough muscle mass, etc., before we continue down this checklist? Cool. All right. Talking in terms of body fat levels. Danny, I'm going to kick this one over to you first. How lean, like, do you want someone at a fairly lean point before we would start a phase like this? Are you like, hey, take them as fat as as fat as we are. If we need to pull off like 50 pounds, that's fine. Is there like kind of a starting point you want for people, or does it really matter?
What, before we go into a building phase?
Into like a fat loss phase. So again, like
Right.
let's say we're like trying to get shredded. Are you good with starting someone fluffy, or do you want to like run a like diet, maintain for a while, then we have this process?
I would like to diet maintain for a while, again, from an adherence point of view, and making sure that they have that structure. But then I'm also looking for feedback in terms of of training and the gym. Like how is our performance? How is our lifestyle? You know, I don't want to get them to the point where sleep is disrupted and, you know, there's other things suffering. I still want them feeling pretty good. But again, the leaner that we can get someone, the more insulin sensitive that they're going to be. But then also you want them still feeling motivated in the gym and being able to push hard. So I couldn't necessarily give you a number because I think it's very individual. But if someone has a lot to lose, then I would say like let's get that down first. And also I think that helps get buy-in from someone. You know, a big part of the coaching relationship is trust, right? And so part of that I think is right. If you can get someone pretty lean, right, and they trust the process, you know, then they're going to trust you to take them into that building phase, which I think is quite scary, especially it's scary for men too, but I think it's also scary for women. Like that's a hard thing, seeing the scale number go up.
For sure.
And being like, no, this is a good thing. This is fine. Yeah. I think we all get it as competitors, but it's still pretty challenging. You know, I still struggle with it.
For sure. I think that your process over the last couple of weeks, I don't know why I've said process so many times this episode already. Your last couple months here, you got diced. You brought weight back up a decent amount, and then you're pushing to get lean again. Is probably a good example of this. Even if someone isn't, like, you're going to be very peeled, obviously. Oh, yeah. But like, even if we're not pushing to get as lean as you are for your show, like the point you brought up to, you guys brought your own body fat back up to, was that just like, hey, this is where biofeedback is good, this is where I feel solid, or what determined, okay, now we're going to stop pushing food back up, or was that purely just timeline to the next show?
It was timeline to the next show, but also getting that peeled is not healthy, right? Like, you know, like things suffer, like cycles gone. I think a big part of building muscle, you know, that's demanding on the body, that's taxing on the body. And if you're not in a good place, if you're not in a place of good health, then it's very hard to lose fat, build muscle, right? So again, kind of going back to what we do a lot with our clients, right, is starting off in that primer phase, right? Again, making sure that all the boxes are ticked in terms of biofeedback, sleep, lifestyle, all that stuff. So pushing my calories kind of back up to that phase, I think allowed that. My coach will give me some stick, but I did get my cycle back, so which is yay. But again, that just also gives me more longevity, you know, in this sport, and a little bit of a mental reprieve to then lock in again. Because otherwise, I will have been in prep I've been in prep since January, and this next show is not till November. That's a full year. So
yeah, that's a pretty good time.
Yeah. So again, it's like factoring in those like psychological factors. You know, it's one thing to just, you know, look at data and just, you know, act like we're all, you know, robots, but there's also the human factor to that, which is something that I think is really important that we, you know, obviously take into account with clients. You know, what's gonna keep them consistent.
Mm-hmm. Do you have something to add there, Andrea?
Yeah, going back to like how lean we want someone before we get into the photo shoot prep, I think that that's a huge part of it, is the mental aspect of it. Very few of us can push for like 40 to 50 weeks on end in a continuous fat loss phase. And so if we can get down to where we can see, you know, so a little bit of shoulder cap, a little bit of quad separation, a little bit of ab lines as a starting point, then have them rest there before we go into the bigger photo shoot fat loss phase push. They're typically going to finish up stronger mentally. And also, we've all talked about in the past, the leaner someone is, the less wiggle room they have, just in terms of adherence, and like things have to be turned up to the next dial in order to continue making more progress. And so if they're out of gas mentally by the end of it, then they're probably going to hit a pretty hard sticking point because they don't have any room for error there at the end.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Most ideal situation, we're already quite lean, probably not below what's sustainable. We still feel good, biofeedback is good, but the smaller the gap between current body fat levels, goal body fat levels, the better our outcomes are going to be. Anything else to add there, Natalie, before we continue? Nice. Okay. Skill set, client skill set, adherence, and mindset, which are things we have already touched on a bit. Biggest thing is we are going to want to be able to see that this person can really adhere. This is something that I really like to set up in the first couple of weeks of coaching. I think of a couple clients I have right now who we're not even pushing for fat loss yet, but it's like, hey, I want to see you just follow the meal plan extremely closely for the first couple of weeks. And even like asking for substitutions where it's like, normally this wouldn't be a big deal, but I just want you, and I would be good with that, but I want you to just show me you can execute on the plan before we adjust, because there is going to be a time to get to the goal that you want where you're just going to have to be able to execute for weeks on end. We don't necessarily feel like it. So I want to like set us up for success. I want to see like what level we can execute at right now before we're in the point where it really hurts, we're really digging. That's before I'm going to take, if I see like someone can't do that and just execute extremely consistently, we're just going to have a bad time. We're not going to get to the outcome. We're not going to be able to get as lean as we want for something like a photo shoot prep. So that's going to be like the biggest thing I'm looking for here is how well do we adhere? And I can, that's kind of carries into the entire, I can't think of another word to describe this except for process right now. The entire process so well, like our training, our nutrition, are we consistent with all those things? But what else are you guys looking for here in terms of skill set, adherence, even mindset?
Also, I'd say ability to like be resilient whenever things come up. Like if there's some fatigue, are we still able to follow through on everything? If plans change or your meal prep bag gets left out and everything's bad, like can we pivot and make the decisions that still follow through on your programming without kind of losing your head?
Not
There's
catastrophizing in
yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
I think in general, that's just such an important skill set to have when it comes to physique development. Kind of the same as all or nothing thinking. Go ahead, Natalie.
It's not that coaching isn't a collaboration. Of course it is. I always tell my clients, I want you to be eating foods you enjoy. Like there's, I'm not going to force anything down your throat, but the clients who are, I think the clients who are most successful in a photo shoot or a contest prep have a do what is needed mindset and are not looking to be entertained or coddled with the plan. Like, oh, I'm really low energy. Are we going to have a refeed, or I'm getting really bored of this meal. It's like, well, the photo shoot process isn't necessarily about entertainment. I mean, ideally you're into the process, like I said earlier, for the love of the game, right? That's the entertainment. We're not, kind of trying to outsource that entertainment for like the dopamine hits of a meal plan change, a refeed, a training novelty. So to your point, Jeremiah, understanding early on where we are on the adherence scale in terms of can you just follow a plan?
Yeah.
I think that honestly, that primer phase that we take our clients through is so enlightening for me as a coach in terms of the client's readiness for change. That's not to say I need to know you can just be a robot and just do whatever I ask of you, but I think just the way that they mentally, psychologically, emotionally approach that primer phase or the plan that you give them is just so telling for how a process will go.
Everybody's saying process so much now. Truly though, again, and it's not just, coaching isn't just, hey, do what I say, don't ask questions. But that's such a good way to put it, like the I will do what is needed mindset. The people who can get the outcomes are just those where it's, hey, we're going to make this adjustment. Cool. And the person just executes it, right? There's not a like, oh, but what if we do this instead? Or like this came up this week and then the next week this came up and it's like, dude, it's 4 weeks in and we still haven't done the thing. Um, that's such a good way to frame that. Okay. Anything else in terms of skill set mindset from y'all?
Skill
I was
set.
gonna say attitude. Oh, sorry. Yeah,
Go ahead,
well,
Dani.
kind of going on what Natalie was saying. Like if they're complaining, about a nitpicking everything, then about the meal plan, or like, oh, this is really hard, or oh, I'm just really really tired. Not that I'm not listening, but again, it tells me a lot about their, like, what we're talking about, their resilience, but also their ability to stick to the plan. But also, like, it's not even hard yet. It's not even that hard yet. But even when I have to dig deep, I think when we all have to dig deep, I think we all have to kind of talk to ourselves and be like, you know what, we get to do this. What a privilege to be in a position where we get to do this and put ourselves through through this, a photo shoot prep, contest prep. And I think that's something that I have to remind my clients of and myself on occasion.
I was just talking to a client about that today. Like, think of what a privilege it is that the hardest thing in your life this week was that you are voluntarily dieting to get leaner because you want to look a little more ripped. Like, we have a pretty good life. On a similar note, I would say ability to sit with hunger and being okay with some hunger is huge. And this is a normal thing to have to work through. Like, there are many clients where we have to work on hunger and just like not catastrophizing hunger, not making hunger an emergency for a long time. And sometimes go through like multiple diets before where we're really okay with like, oh, it's okay to feel this. My life isn't over. I find sometimes, and again, I don't ever want to just negate like the client experience, but I do find a lot of times people can almost like over associate hunger with a drop in energy levels, training performance, etc. Like tell themselves, oh man, we're like a week into the diet, my training really sucked, and like I was just super low energy. And it's a lot of times like, hey, we are not at the point where we should like physiologically be expecting this to happen yet. Again, I'm not trying to catastrophize or not trying to negate these feelings, but we might want to examine this a little bit more and sit with like, okay, does this have to be true for me? Is this really dietary? Is this again like have we like been telling ourselves prior to entering the diet, or we're like telling ourselves a story that we're just going to be super low energy every day, and that kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy? But a lot of times there's like some things to work through there before someone can really like manage getting shredded well. Anything else on this front?
Productive coping mechanisms.
Mm. Elaborate on that.
Like the ability to productively cope and regulate emotions. And
Hmm.
I would put hunger in that as well. So just being able to sit with discomfort because you're going to be tired, you're going to be hungry, and understanding, again, not catastrophizing those things. I suppose I was on the fence with saying the ability to disassociate. It really does help. I know that's not always a positive thing, but sure helps me. Um, but a little glimpse into my psychology.
Yeah, it's
But
gotta get dark if we follow this path too
that's
much.
right. That's right. I'm dieting, guys. Back off. No, but the ability to just self-regulate and productively cope, not turning to food for entertainment. I'm bored. I'm hungry. I'm tired. Oh, like let me, go out to eat. I deserve this. Things of that nature. I think it takes just a lot of emotional maturity to recognize emotions and physiological sensations like hunger or low energy and just call them for what they are and nothing more.
Hmm.
I like to say adopt a yoga mindset, like observe without judgment. It's like I acknowledge, I observe these thoughts and feelings. It doesn't necessarily mean I need to do anything about them.
That's a yoga thing. That's
I'm
beautiful.
told.
Oh, okay.
As a
Okay.
non-yogi, that's what I hear.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Cool. Anything else here? All right. Caloric intake. Is there a certain place you want people's food to be in terms of, hey, this person can maintain on like X amount of calories. I know it's hard to throw out a specific number there. I guess I would ask more for like red flags. Anything y'all are looking for here? Fancy Angie, I think you'd be a good one to kick this off for us.
Uh, I I don't know if I can give a number because it's so specific to the person. Um,
5,000 calories.
At least
even
5,000 calories.
even like
Maintenance.
per body weight, it's just so individual. Like there's freaks like Janae who eats a ton of food in her build phase and still like keeps her food quite high in her diet phase. And then people on the opposite end of the spectrum. A lot of it has to do with just movement through the day naturally and muscle mass to fat mass ratio. But I would say, like, on the flip side, looking at red flags, if somebody is just very sticky, like they have one meal out and it takes the entire week for that to come back down whenever they've deviated by, 400 calories. It's generally not a good sign that they're metabolically very flexible and in a place where fat loss is going to go really smoothly, because generally then they're also very sticky on the way down. If somebody's maintaining, there's not like a threshold where I'm like, okay, now you're good to go for a fat loss phase. But on the flip side, if we're at like 10 calories per pound, we should be losing weight in a metabolically healthy system at that intake. Nobody freak out if they hear that number and that's where they're at and not losing weight. But just in general, that's a pretty low number. Well, no, I won't go into biofeedback. Yeah, that's what I'll say about calorie intake.
Yeah, I would agree though. Again, like don't freak out if there's exceptions. We don't know your body weight, etc. But if we're like looking at a pretty lean person who wants to get ripped and we're just maintaining on like 10 to 12 times body weight in terms of calories, probably oftentimes something else we need to dig into and address there first.
Yeah, maybe look at your lab work.
Yes, definitely. I would want to look at labs first as well. Again, like it'll vary. Like Andrea, you are someone who you can't ever work your food up extremely high, correct? I know it's improved, but like your food doesn't get extremely high.
That's not crazy. Yeah, it's definitely
What are,
improved, but I'd say I'm about 2,100 calories on average right now, maintaining or just slowly ticking up over time.
okay, that's gotten a lot better than actually. Dani, what about you? What's like a maintenance intake for you?
Supposedly 2,400,
Pretty good.
about, yeah.
Okay. Oh, and you
But
guys
that's
are
but
all
that's also changed over the years, I think that's
yeah.
also something to think about. Like when I think first started, it was like 4 years ago. It was maybe I maybe started at 2,000, and then just and then worked from there. And I think that's also something that clients should realize. Like we want to give you more food, we want to give you more nutrients, more fuel. A higher starting point is more runway for us to kind of start from.
For sure.
It's the goal is never to see how little we can give you. It's the more fuel that we can give you, the more nutrients we can give you, the better place we're in to build muscle and lose fat.
Yeah,
And be
absolutely.
healthy.
Absolutely. I find that a lot of times, I mean, the process will look like we'll start working with someone. Maybe we go through a fat loss phase initially. The goal might not necessarily be to get shredded. A lot of times that person doesn't have the skill of dieting mastered yet. So we're learning a lot of that along the way. We get leaner, spend a good amount of time building, very similar to like what we're talking about with like Lindsay Mundy's kind of timeline, building a lot of muscle, address like any potential health bottlenecks we identified. Like maybe after the fat loss phase, we got some lab work done. There's some things we need to address, spend some time working through those. And then we're in a really good responsive position. Intake is sometimes a bit higher going into the next phase. Now, on the flip side, I think that when we're looking at shorter timelines, even like 1 to 2 years, in terms of like, this is kind of just a tangent, but like how much someone can lose on or how much we can increase someone's calorie intake and keep them losing, I do think it's important. Like, unless we're addressing like some deeper functional health issues, addressing like thyroid issues or things of that nature, we're like pretty healthy. We were adhering well before. Us going through like a building phase and then dieting again, we're not going to really be able to increase your metabolic rate drastically to where we're probably going to have to diet again on pretty similar calories just to be realistic again, unless we're like addressing health issues or drastically ramping up your movement or something of the sort. Um, that is much more like a long play over years and years of building. Like, hey, we'll see things improve here. Anything else in terms of calorie intake before
I
we
have a
continue to biofeedback?
theory. Yeah, I think this ties into the conversation in terms of like psychological and experiential profile of this person. But I think a lot of times, a lot of the people that you hear about with relatively high intakes
Hmm.
are also the people that are staying on plan and tracking very accurately.
What are you trying to
So
say, Natalie? I'm just
just
kidding.
it's
Go on.
interesting, like a lot of the bodybuilders you might follow and you're like, wow, she can eat so much food. I mean, yes, like yes, more muscle helps, right? And the more muscle you have, like you're probably carrying around more mass, which means your expenditure is a little bit higher, moving your bigger body through space. But also, I don't know many people that are like having multiple meals out per week that are like winging it that have a very accurate understanding of their maintenance caloric intake. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Am I
Yeah,
articulating
no,
myself? Like,
that's a very
I
good
feel
way to
like
put it.
yeah, the person that's like looking at, keeping up with the Joneses, and like, well, Mrs. Jones can eat like 2,800 calories and it's like, yeah, but she's like on it. She's not really eating meals out. She's like basically on a meal plan, tracking very accurately, very experienced. And like the onlooker is usually someone who is kind of not doing those things. So it's like your perception is that you're maintaining at a lower intake. I'm not saying like everyone obviously can like get really accurate and then all of a sudden their maintenance is 2,800 calories or anything of the sort, but it seems like a lot of times those accusations are coming from people who actually really aren't on it.
Yeah, that's a very good insight. You're full of wisdom today, Natalie.
I'm
There
full
is,
of insights, Jeremiah.
I know. There is truly though like an inverse relationship between the amount of meals someone eats out and the amount of calories I can feed them to maintain, lose anywhere in our like any phase that we're in. Again, I'm not. We all love a good meal out, but that's like I think of the clients I have who are maintaining on like 2,300 plus calories, and they're all pretty on top of their shit.
Yeah. And like understand too that the more accurate an assessment and an idea we have of your maintenance intake and how much it takes for you to be in a slight surplus, the more granular we can get and likely
Mhm.
the more we can feed you in a diet because we know that you're tracking accurately.
I love it. Cool. Biofeedback. In terms of major biofeedback red flags that would tell us someone isn't ready for fat loss, which I mean, we've talked through these a lot on the podcast, of course. Hey, do we have a consistent, healthy menstrual cycle? Is that well regulated? That is going to be a huge one. If already we're seeing going into this process that sex hormones aren't in a good place, which menstrual cycle dysregulation is going to be a big red flag. That's the case. We're probably not going to get the best outcomes, but it's also going to take us longer to be able to restore that and build more muscle, get you back to healthy in the future. This again, depending on where you're at. We talked about like HRT in our last episode. Like how we address that would be very dependent on so many different factors, but as a whole, like, hey, we want that to be a good place first. Um, Other biofeedback red flags from y'all. Hey, this person isn't ready for fat loss yet. What are you looking for?
I'm gonna say hunger regulation,
Mm-hmm.
and that could be physiological, biofeedback, or psychological, or a combination of both. But
Mm-hmm.
if someone is like constantly hungry throughout the day, probably we need to sort some of that out before we get you peeled.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
food
absolutely.
focus is high. And again, this could be like physiological. It could also be psychological, but like hunger cues.
If we're just maintaining and we're constantly hungry throughout the day, yes. Like again, we're okay with some hunger if we're dieting, obviously. Um, Digestion. Y'all concerned about like going into fat loss, digestion is off or not so much?
Yeah, either spectrum of digestion being off, not ideal for a lot of reasons. Like if we have really fast gut motility, so not solid stools, rapid, you know, rapidly,
You have
rapidly,
diarrhea.
yep, diarrhea. There you go. Then we're not absorbing our food, and that's a problem for a lot of reasons in terms of maintaining muscle tissue, but also absorbing nutrients. So if we're dieting, we're going to be taking your food lower, which gives us even less of an opportunity to take in nutrients. And so if we're not even able to absorb what we are taking in, this is not going to improve. And then on the reverse end of the spectrum, slower gut motility, so constipation. Um, in a lot of people, we see with dieting that gets worse. Not always, ideally, but as you do diet, especially if you're getting like super lean, super peeled, we see gut motility slow, and this affects things like thyroid. Um, Also like nutrient absorption and things of that nature. Like it's certainly not going to be your best look like from a midline, like maintaining a lean waistline kind of experience, but yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of times, I mean, if someone has chronic constipation already, there is something like thyroid related that we need to address, or hey, this person has low stomach acid, which will often go hand in hand with thyroid downregulation. But as you said, we're not absorbing a lot of the other nutrients we need as well. So typically, again, if we have that consistently prior to fat loss is just going to be a fucking grind for this person. We're going to have to diet on extremely low calories. And again, because there's typically a more functional type thing we need to address first. Sometimes, most ideal world is just, hey, this person is just dehydrated and they need to get better at eating more fiber. It's not always that deep, but oftentimes there are other things we need to address. Andrea, Dani, anything else from y'all in terms of biofeedback?
I've worked with so many clients who just don't poop. I'm like,
Never.
girl, you need. I'm like, girl, you need to be pooping. Like, you need to be pooping once a day. At least. I've worked with clients like literally, it's like once every 3 days. I'm like, girl, this is not right. And I think it's just because we don't talk about it. I think we're stuck in this like girls don't poop or whatever. I don't know. It's like, girl, that's not right.
What I
And
see with that a lot, though, sorry to interrupt, but very
go for it.
much like on your point, Danny, what I see a lot with that is you'll hear a lot of doctors be like, it's totally normal to like just poop every other day or every 3 days. And I'm not trying to admonish medical professionals by any means, but I always like to say we're in the business of physique development, which means we're like I always like to say when it comes to things like lab work or like gut health and function, like if you think about a bell curve, what side of the bell curve do you want to be on? And that's so healthcare professionals are much more in the general pool, right? So when you look at like the averages that they're pulling from like the lowest of the low and the highest of the high and everything in between. So again, what side of that bell curve do you want to be on? For next level results when it comes to your physique, we have to get the body to respond. And for your body to be the most responsive, it needs to be its healthiest. So having you on that other end, the low end of the bell curve, is really not going to work here.
And I mean, to relate that back to physique development, us having a consistent daily bowel movement, like a 4 or 5 on the Bristol stool chart, is going to be a good sign that we're absorbing and actually able to utilize nutrients well, which ties back to hormones, how we feel, our ability to build muscle. So many different factors there. It is just pretty crazy. I would agree, Danny, how many women, especially I talk to, where I don't know if I've ever talked to a dude who's like is just constipated all the time. Actually, now that I think of it, I don't think I've ever had that come in with a client, but it's very common with women. And it's just like, yeah, this is basically just how I've been. I don't think there's anything wrong. And it's like,
Girl, that's not okay.
I'm sure we can improve this.
That's
Yeah.
not good. Yeah.
Anything else biofeedback wise? I would just in general, I mean, your basics like sleep, hunger, energy, recovery, digestion. I think that like shreds. I think that's a pretty good summary of, hey, we want to make sure all these things are in a decent place. If we're extremely low energy, if our sleep is terrible, and it's not something we can solve with just like, hey, once we move out of this higher stress period of time, and life will be okay, we'll probably want to address that first. Same thing with like our energy being consistently low. It's going to just dip more. So we want to make sure we're not in too much of a hole prior to starting this phase. But yeah, I don't think we need to dig into addressing those here. Any other commonalities we haven't mentioned? This doesn't have to be so like tactical. This can just be traits. Any other commonalities we haven't mentioned that you guys see amongst clients who get the most ripped? Like I'll say one thing I have noticed is that the people who get the most ripped almost always seem like they're the busiest people on my roster. Like it's never like yeah, I just have a ton of time, and I find the person who struggles the most honestly is the person who seems to have the most time. Whereas like yeah, I coach like a couple clients every day and kind of just hang out and do my own thing. That's the person who struggles to get their cardio done, to really nail the plan. Where like it's like I'm a mom, I have 2 jobs. I think I don't know if it's just the structure that's forced upon you, but those seem to be the people who are best at taking it the furthest. Agreed?
I would agree with you, just because I think those types of busy people, they have their priorities, and they have their almost that like A-type personality of like, no, this is what I'm going to achieve, this is what I got to do, these are the boxes I have to tick. And they also have an ability to say no.
Yeah.
Right? It's no, I'm not going to go out for a happy hour, or no, I'm not going to give in to peer pressure and have nachos. And I think that's a very strong personality trait of clients that are successful in this. They're solid in themselves as a person, and know when to say no.
Yeah. I will say, like, as a mom myself, I can really speak to this. but like, I think Andrea is a good example of this. Just at least from my perspective, it doesn't seem like you think about how you feel about doing things before you do them. And I don't know if that's just like, I do think that it seems like there's an element of like, yeah, you've just had so much on your plate that you don't really have the luxury of that. Like, got to take care of my kids, then I got to do this thing, then I got to do this thing. So those people are just able to execute. It's not like, oh, I don't feel like doing this, so I'm going to push it back to later. It's just like, I'm going to do this right now. This is when I have time. But again, and I think the organization aspect that seems like it's forced upon you to like keep your kids alive and do other stuff. Seems like it helps.
Yeah, I mean, even with clients that aren't moms, of course, like just there's a name for, I think, that phenomenon or whatever, where it's like the time that you have just expands, or the time that it takes to do a task expands the time that you have.
Parkinson's syndrome. That's what it is. Parkinson's syndrome.
Okay. Anyway, that's interesting naming. I didn't realize, because that's also Parkinson's disease is very different. Anyways, so by Parkinson's syndrome law, you have this space of time to get something done, and you just do it. And I think that's
not actually correct. Okay. I Googled it. No.
Okay.
I literally heard this on a podcast. I literally heard this on a podcast yesterday, and I was like, I didn't think that was called that either. I wish I wouldn't have sounded so confident saying that now.
You say it all the time, though, Jeremiah. Like, you fill the time that you have.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's really true.
Another trait I would say, so that we can move on from the Parkinson syndrome,
I'm going to edit this out of the podcast.
Make it sound like
there
I
is
said
no
it.
going back.
Another trait is, though, the clients who get the most shredded are also not the ones questioning and stressing about having to spend this time ahead of time in a primer or a build phase. They're just on board with it. If you guys notice that, where it's like the person who is the most stressed and so rushed and ready to get out of the primer phase and into fat loss is also never the one that has made the most progress in fat loss.
Oh, for sure. Because you're not actually managing your whole process prior to that. Well, fuck. I don't know why I can't stop saying process. That's driving me crazy. But really, like, you haven't managed the rest of your process well if you're just in a rush to get into the fat loss. If we're so sick of like, oh, I can't wait to get into this, we typically haven't managed any of that extremely well. We haven't built a whole lot of muscle. Cool. Anything else?
I don't think we've touched on it. I don't think we need to expound, but it is worth mentioning that these people are good at training and train really hard.
It's a good take.
Because they probably don't have a good amount of muscle if they don't do those things.
Typically follow a meal plan. If we're getting shredded, we can execute on that. We've already talked about this so much on the podcast as well. It's been incredibly rare. I've had someone get super ripped who didn't at least like 90% of their week just follow a meal plan. Anything else? Cool. All right, let's wrap it up there. Really, I think the biggest takeaway from this is, as coaches, often our job is to kind of protect clients from themselves. Where again, we want your feedback, we want your input, but also we need to look at what does our timeline and the way we structure our phases need to look like to get to the best long-term physique outcome, and make sure that this aligns, right? Because a lot of times us getting into fat loss right out of the gate, trying for that photo shoot prep right out of the gate, hey, we're not going to get a drastically better result than you have in the past. Whereas we may need to spend a year focusing on building. You might not feel your leanest that entire time, but a year and a half from now, when we've gone through the photo shoot prep, built a lot of muscle in the time between, we can uncover a drastically different physique. So, I mean, largely it comes back to what we talked about so much before, where making sure we're not always just chasing fat loss, but actually taking the time to develop our physique in the time between. Anything to add from y'all before we wrap it up? Otherwise, we will close it up here. Pretty good.
If you've made it this far, comment process on the podcast.
Yes.
Or Parkinson's.
That's what I was about
Yeah.
to say. Or Parkinson's. Cool. As always, thank you guys for tuning in. If you enjoy the show, leave us a 5-star rating and review. If you would like to apply to work with our team, hit the link in the show notes, and we will catch you guys next time.